Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. When I say the worst animated movie of all time, what do you think of? The new Megamind 2? The Emoji Movie? Well, let me say this, whatever movies you name, it's most likely not worse than Speed Racer Race to the Future. And trust me, I'm not the only one who thinks this movie is bad. Now look, I'm a massive Speed Racer fan, so it kind of pains me to bash this movie. I'm gonna go over what makes the elements of this film bad and explain why they are bad. But before we get started, if you want to support my channel, then subscribing would help so much. It's completely up to you, and regardless, I really hope you enjoy this video. Without further ado, let's get started. Now, I would put a spoiler warning, but I'm telling you not to watch it, so you're not gonna watch it, right? Well, regardless, there's spoilers, so just be aware of that. Number 1, the story. So if you've never heard of Speed Racer before, Speed Racer is a teenage kid who competes in a bunch of races and goes on adventures along with his amazing car, the Mach 5, that has many different capabilities. He's inspired to become an amazing racer, even the best racer in the world, in order to live up to his older brother's dream, Rex, who ran away from home. In this film, Pops Racer, Speed Racer's father, installs a time orb in the Mach 5 to rewind time in case of a car accident of any sort. When Speed sneaks out to a race, a lightning strike hits the orb and Speed and his team are transported 50 years into the future where robots took over and human drivers are illegal. And in order to get back home, Speed needs to compete in the deadly Superdome 1000 race against robot drivers to win money for an energy power source to power up the orb and go back home. And that's it. It's your typical time travel movie with typical robots taking over the city with rebellions and things like that. So is this concept itself bad? Yes, if there is nothing to add to make it special or interesting. Every single bit of this screams generic. You got your typical rich villain who wants to take over the world, typical certain connection to characters, typical rebellion drama, and typical looking robots typically taking over the world. That's why you add the Speed Racer ingredient in. Now the plot becomes interesting, except that it really doesn't, because the extra ingredient doesn't make the other ingredients good or interesting. It's still such a generic movie, but just with different characters with nothing new to add, no twists or exploration of different concepts. And not to mention the major plot holes in this story, like how does nobody see Speed when he literally lifts off his robot disguise in plain sight? How does Speed or even Sparky not notice the obvious tires following them? How does Speed not notice Sprite or Change him literally jumping into the Mach 5 right behind him? How do they even manage to hide that fast? How does Pops manage to sneak into the racing dome? How does he even manage to activate the orb to take Speed back 15 seconds in the past to save his life despite having no energy source? Why would the villain dive down right between Speed and a building if he was already gonna win? The villain's air vehicle gets destroyed, so how does he keep on chasing Speed literally a minute later with the same airship with no damage? And there are so many more plot holes like this, it's ridiculous. So many of these holes are in this story, and some may be little and some aren't, but the fact is that there's so much of them, it just goes to show that the story by itself is weak and there are too many to go unnoticed. So yeah, the story of this isn't that good, and it sure as hell isn't helped by their characters. Which leads me to my second point, characters. Characters are an integral part to any form of storytelling, and if they suck, the story gets impacted, and unfortunately, the original characters that this film adapts suck. Speed Racer is childish and annoying. He throws a fit when Pops prevents him from entering a race where a dangerous storm is taking place. I don't know how old Speed is in this movie, but he has to be at least 17 or 18, and seeing him act like a complete child in our first scene with him is pathetic. In this movie, Speed goes through the development of the classic father and son dynamic, where the son is acting like his own father, then he rebels against, and he suddenly understands their ways and reasoning, and the same goes for the father. Again, it's generic. But it's not only that, it's the fact that this kind of development is not well built up, and when it is, it's rushed, and when it takes place suddenly and out of nowhere. Plus, not to mention, Speed's character being inconsistent at times. At one point he's childish and stupid, but the next he's reasonable and calm. The protagonist is one of the main keys to making a great story, and I get that the film wanted to do something new with Speed, but you can't ignore first impressions and likability. And when you don't have that, plus having little to rush character development, you end up with a bland, boring, and uninteresting protagonist. Next up is Trixie, Speed's love interest, and she's alright, I guess. She's honestly pretty unremarkable. The producers try to make her more into an independent type woman character, which I don't have anything against. There's nothing really there. She's a bit more cocky and a pretty outgoing, but she's okay. However, there was a point in the movie where I started to dislike her a little because she is kind of the reason why things kind of start to turn worse for Speed after halfway through the movie, so she kind of sucks for that. Overall, there's nothing too good or too bad about Trixie. She's just unremarkable and causes more obstacles to fall in the character's way. Sparky is Speed's best friend, and he's the usual mechanic, smart guy who is pretty cool. He's funny at times, he's there for Speed, he's okay. Again, nothing new with this character or changes. He's just meh. Nothing to hate, nothing to really love. Racer X is Speed's older brother who, I don't know if he ran away from home or if he's still living there. Like, he'll pop into someone's room, give advice, and just disappear randomly. I'm sitting there like Pops right now thinking, what the hell just happened? Rex gives advice to Speed, which was supposed to be impactful, but it doesn't feel that way because their brotherly bond hasn't built up or mentioned, so it just feels weak. It just feels a plot device to just destroy some cars, and that's it. Also, just a word of advice, maybe let us hear the characters actually talk.
Easy for you to say. You're old enough to make your own rules.
Once you make them, you gotta play by them. Trust me, you're not ready for that. Just cool your jets for another year. In the blood.
And those are the major characters of this show, and yeah, they're all meh at best. And if they're meh, then the rest are just also meh or below meh. Not to mention some of the horrible dialogue they're given.
Nice rear end. No, I meant the car.
Eat exhaust, lugnut.
Bite tire, airhead.
Lastly is animation and design. The designs of characters are bland and not really that appealing. The look for Speed, Trixie, and Sparky all right, everyone else is either just bland or unappealing, especially Racer X. However, I will say the design for the Mach 5 is terrible. The overall shape is correct and the spoiler looks cool, but why the hell does the number 5 logo look like that? What the hell are those lights? And why are there 3 M's on the hood of the car? It looks dumb as hell. I feel like they tried to go more for like a futuristic look, but if you're gonna go for that, at least use a design like the one from New Adventures or Restart. Why this? Again, the only reason why I kind of like it is the shape of it and the spoiler, but that's it. As for animation, it's kind of hard to describe. I tried researching what kind of animation this is, but all I've got is that this animation is a simple line drawn animation. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. I mean, look at some of these animation scenes and just tell me your opinion. In some parts, the animation is too choppy, too smooth, and too weird. It just looks super cheap. And not to mention that the animation sometimes doesn't even align with the voice acting. I mean, look at this.
We're humans, and you're just not doing your job.
Yeah!
Come on, that's just embarrassing. Now, one thing that is really important is that this movie came out in 2016. That year we had Kubo, Silent Voice, Secret Life of Pets, and Sing. And those movies look miles better than this film that looks like it should have been released in the 2000s or earlier. So yeah, animation is way below decent. Okay, now, is there anything I liked about this movie? Yeah, I kind of like the design of the Mach 5 a little. I think the first 5 or so minutes of the big race are cool, and the theme song is pretty catchy in my opinion. Yeah, those things are the only real things I actually enjoyed, but everything else is just... Weak story, weak characters, weak animation, weak designs, and all of this was a result of no passion being put towards the film, makes this the worst animated film I have seen yet. I don't even know why the film was made in the first place. Was it made for younger kids? Maybe, but even then, I don't see why anyone would put this on for their kids when there's better animated Speed Racer projects like this. Was it made for the fans? I don't know. These characters are very unrecognizable and it's just not a good movie, so I highly doubt it's for the fans. And the crazy part is we've gotten 3 amazing Speed Racer animated shows and an outstanding live action movie, best movie ever made by the way, that have been made years before, and they outshine this movie in every way possible. Great characters, great and fun stories, and amazing animation, cinematography, and visuals. It's crazy how we went from something like this to this. And not to mention that this was the last Speed Racer media we have ever gotten since the lawsuit situation with the Speed Racer Enterprises company. It's just kind of upsetting to see that this would be the last piece of Speed Racer media that would ever be produced. If you're a die-hard Speed Racer fan, then I feel like you may want to check this out. If you're looking for a good story, good animation, and good characters regardless if it's Speed Racer or not, do not watch this movie. I personally wanted to make this video because I love Speed Racer so much, and this is something I really wanted to talk about. And on that note, I think this is where I'll leave the video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it, and if you have seen this movie, let me know if you like it or not, and feel free to express why you feel the way you do. If you have any other bad or great movies to recommend to me that you would like me to talk about, let me know in the comments down below if you would like. But again, I hope you all have enjoyed, and I wish you all an amazing day or night. See ya!